At the beginning of the year, I set out to become a reader again. Reading was something that always sparked a lot of joy within me growing up, and I really wanted to find my way back to that. So, all in all, I read a total of 55 books. To me, that's great. I had a wonderful year, and here I'm actually going to take some time and recap my top 10 favorite books of the year. I have to admit, this was really hard for me to choose, so there will be some honorable mentions at the end. If you want a closer look into my reading and my analysis of the books I read, then please keep an eye out because I will be posting a blog and more info on that to come soon. Kicking things off for us is And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. I have to say, this book had me bawling the entire time. It is a very heartfelt story of a grandfather who has dementia, and he is struggling every day to hold on to his memories more and more. But it is also about his family and how they're helping him through it, all the while they are grieving him. This definitely made me think about those that I love that are no longer with me and the impact that they had in my life. And it also made me look at the people who I love that are still with me in a brand new light. Next, we have Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. I had to pick up this book as soon as I moved to Austin, and I realized what a big deal Matthew McConaughey is here. And I was immediately ashamed to admit that I only knew him as that guy from Magic Mike. So I picked up his memoir, and I have to say, it was just funny. I mean, through humor and introspection, he tells the story of his life, and at the end of each story, he provides a nugget of wisdom. He also encourages readers to look at moments in life as green lights or opportunities for growth and forward momentum, and I absolutely loved it. It was so funny and inspiring. Next, we have Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. This was a great insight into Trevor Noah's life and the struggles that him and his mom had to endure in South Africa. I also found it to be a great resource on apartheid in South Africa. I have to say I didn't know much about him going into this, but now I'm a huge fan of his. Now, this next one is not just one of my favorite books of the year, but it is now my favorite book of all time, and that is The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. It was originally a podcast, and now it's a collection of essays where John Green covers different topics such as sunsets, Dr. Pepper, and so much more, and he rates them out of 5 stars. There is so much that I had no knowledge on, and now I have so much conversational material about. This man was the face of my high school years, and now he is going to be the face of my adulthood. This next book is actually one of my last reads of the year, and that is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. It's essentially the story of a small town where hockey is king, and the growth and financial well-being of the town rests on the shoulders of the junior hockey team winning their finals. It also explores the repercussions of a very violent incident committed by one of the star players. I felt like I was really a part of this town. I felt Maya and her family's pain and frustration very deeply, and overall, I felt all emotions really deeply in this book. I mean, I found it really hard to get into series this year. I think I only got into one other one, but I immediately picked up the second book after finishing this one. If you follow me on bookstagram or have had any bookish interaction with me this year, you know I had to include Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I have not shut up about this book this year. I found this to be a very heartfelt book where 3 stories intertwine beautifully, one from a very unique perspective, which is that of a giant Pacific octopus. I actually felt like I had closure with every aspect of the story, so I found it to be an impeccable book. Next, we have a classic. We have The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This explores a society called Gilead, where women are subjugated and assigned specific roles. Here we follow a handmaid named Offred, whose sole purpose is to bear children for the ruling class. We follow her as she explores this oppressive regime and tries to regain some of her autonomy back. This dystopian novel was altogether horrifying and painfully not unrealistic. Margaret Atwood is now one of my favorite authors of all time. Next is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is essentially the story of the Trojan War told from the perspective of Patroclus, Achilles' companion. And I really, really hope I am pronouncing his name correctly. But in this partial retelling, Patroclus and Achilles fall in love. I mean, I thought the writing was so impeccable and the love story was so pure. I mean, even when Patroclus didn't fully agree with Achilles, he still stood by his side. And he really suffered in the space between his love for Achilles and his moral oppositions to his actions. Next is How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie Cruz. This follows a Dominican woman in her mid-50s who lost her job during the Great Recession and was paired with a job counselor. Throughout the 12 sessions with her, she retells the story of her life. Though I'm Cuban and not Dominican, I really found that this story reminded me a lot of my family members, most notably my grandma, who is resilient, stubborn, and altogether a force to be reckoned with. And finally, we have If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. This is the story of a terminally ill postman who makes a deal with the devil in exchange for his life. I am really under explaining the story here to try not to give anything away, but it really made me look at things that are seemingly unimportant in life in a whole new light. And it really made me think, if today was my last day on earth, would I be happy with the result? Lastly, I do have to give some honorable mentions because this was hard enough to choose on its own. But I do need to mention Dear America, Notes of an Undocumented Citizen by Jose Antonio Vargas, A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen Peck, and The Only One Left by Riley Sager. Overall, I had a fantastic year reading. I laughed a lot. I cried, admittedly, way too much. I had a lot of books that made me look at my life in a different light and the people that I love and the things around me. And I thought it was fantastic. It was a roller coaster of emotions, one that I'm so happy that I got on and I don't think I will be getting off of. I am really proud and happy that I can call myself a reader again after so long. And this is definitely a hobby that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. And I'm so glad I did it. Thank you to everyone who came along with me on my journey. There's so much more to come, and I cannot wait to see what next year has in store for us.